Improv Games. Improv Games are originally created by Viola Spolin and her co-founder of Second City, and Improv Games are not LARPs. And they're not improvised theater either or anything like that. But they do help teach people how to improvise, to do improvised theater. And they do it through setting goals and exercises. So, Viola Spolin and various other people talk about improv games and their relationship to theater, and various other fields have situations which involve sort of more advanced improv games. But what I'd like to focus on initially in this talk is the more basic types of improv games. So, what is an improv game? Well, that's basically the improv game is what teaches you how to do improv theater. But it's the teacher-director. So the teacher-director is a term actually invented by Viola Spolin, hybridized the roles of the director and the more common role of the improv teacher, which is actually a teacher, and designing improv games and more advanced improv games, which I'll get into later on. So, improv games aren't games in the most specific sense. Like most role-playing games, they don't have any winners, but they also don't have a specific line between improv games and improv exercises either. But they always have a lesson and often more than one. And I'll get into it when I actually give an example of improv game. And usually short and simple. A good way to teach socialization skills, as mentioned previous talks and the previous lectures which I attended. But they must be played repeatedly. To give an example, Destin created a YouTube channel where in one video, it took him 6 months to learn how to ride a bike with its handlebars reversed. So you turn left on the handlebars and the wheel goes right. You turn right on the handlebars, the wheel goes left. That is, you'd think it'd be simple, you can understand how to do it, but understanding it or knowing is not actually understanding. So, you have to play them repeatedly, and it's surprisingly difficult to do improvisation, as displayed by my constant use of the word up here, but it's that's because I just haven't practiced my speech enough. So, the teacher-director. So, the teacher-director has the job of explaining the rules. And usually you have to get a specialized teacher in for this. So this doesn't work for schools where you may have a rigid administrative control over programs, where the programs themselves like to have their teachers and their teachers only. You actually have to get a drama teacher to do these sorts of games, or a game designer, or having a teacher willing to learn how to run these games. They coach the players, especially the ones not showing the level of advancement of the other players. And this is often called side coaching. They observe the players, and adjust the difficulties. So it's, improv games, there's a lot of variation in them. And they've often got simpler forms and more advanced form. And the more improv games you're familiar with, the more room you have to adjust them. And they're third parties, which allows them to remain objective to the players and the things. Now, designing an improv game, which is the basic mode of research which I've attempted to do, there's no rules about designing an improv game, but there are several guidelines. So keep it short and focused by relying upon a single problem. No randomness or complex plots. And it's very common in live action role playing or tabletop role playing to use dice to resolve things. Doesn't work for improv games. Actually, it's anathema to improv games. Randomness, the world is random enough. If you're inserting randomness, then the lesson you can say, well, maybe, maybe not. No, that's not really teaching anything except randomness. They do have a stopping point, but you don't plan how to get there. So you set them a problem, but you don't really provide any one solution. They're easier to design than other games, which is actually a bit of a challenge. I've been a game designer for, it was 22 years when I started playing improv games, but that was about 30 years ago. So, actually designing improv games, I had to completely throw out everything I knew about game design. So, for example, I'm going to behave like someone, and I want you to yell it out, who I'm trying to behave like. And got it. So, any guesses? No? That's because I'm not very experienced with this particular improv game. This is the Guess Who game. The person that I was trying to evoke was a very famous American, Obama, at a speech where he swatted a fly. So that's my own improv game, but it's based upon and takes the general form of several other improv games created by Lynne, Atkins. You can go online and search improv games and find several more variants. And Lynne herself wrote 3 in her first book, and then successive editions of books provided probably 5 or 6 extra variations on that game and games like it. But her games are actually more advanced than mine, because the role of the intended party, the subject who plays the role, is played out by the person making the guess at the role, and you need to establish a relationship between them. So, eventually you get to the point where you get to the more advanced improv games. Now this is what most actual schools do. We've all heard of, it's very common in nursing school to have tests where people will come in and start acting as if they're hurt in some way, and actually then the students themselves will have to step in and say, okay, I need to deal with this person, how do I treat this person? Okay. At the same time, this is the same common thing with interrogations for border security. That's another form of advanced improv game. Improv games usually don't need actors, but advanced improv games, often you do need actors. They vary widely depending on the field. So you could do all these improv games with theater schools, but if you're setting up an improv game for a nursing school versus a border security school, completely different. So, in conclusion, technical fields like nursing can use improv games to train their students to improve their social skills. And to give an example, body language, observation of body language is an example of a skill, but it gets combined with speaking languages or vocal skills, leadership, as previous mentioned. Advanced games are only meant for players who have gotten some vocational training. So if you open up and start your class off with an improv game, more advanced improv games, then they don't have the skills that are required to do. You know, you don't, the more advanced games are meant as tests to see if what you've taught them has been absorbed. But it's better to have your vocational training and improv training as well. So it's a sort of way of the two fields support each other. So these skills may be developed in other ways, so there's no one way to specifically center out or single out improv games versus other methods of training these skills. And it's a limitation on the study, but that's one of the limitations. Practice makes perfect. Whoops. Practice makes perfect. You can't expect someone to sit down and play an improv games and get it right the first time. As demonstrated by my failure to act like Obama, it's sometimes just doesn't click with people. And improv games are not the only way to create educational games, and that's basically what we've been covering this conference. That we've discovered that interactive literature, live action role playing, everything like that, there are many ways to create educational role playing games, but improv games do have an established relationship with theater schools, and they need to be accepted by other schools as well, because they're too valuable to be left only to theater schools. Thank you.